I never liked kids. Babies were boring, little kids were brats. I definitely never thought that I would one day want to have a child of my own. So in my 20s, when my mom got sick and I knew she was dying, I never thought to ask her, what was I like as a baby, or any other questions about myself as a baby, because I didn't care. Now, a few years later, when my father got sick, this is the depressing part, I'll get through this soon. When my father got sick, I knew I did want to have kids, which is a whole nother story, but I didn't have one yet, so I had nothing specific to ask him. So when he was dying, I was like, hey Dad, what was I like as a child? And he was like, oh, you were a happy baby. Which I don't know if that was true or not, because my dad was that typical commute 2 hours to work every day, work 90 hours a week, like not really home a lot. And so it was an answer. I don't know that it was a satisfying answer, but jump ahead a few years and I found myself happily pregnant, parentless obviously, but happily pregnant, expecting my first child, and suddenly I had questions. Because when you become pregnant, for those of you who haven't had the pleasure, your body changes just a little bit. And you start thinking about things like, well, what was my mom's pregnancy like? And what was my birth like? And is it really that bad? Yeah, it is. And then when you have a child, it's like the questions just multiply by a million, right? Because I don't know about 5 years ago or 20 years ago when I was born, but when you have a child in this day and age, they hand you this book, right? It's called a record book, and they tell you to write everything down. It's like, when did she have her first tooth, and when did she first roll over, and when did she first fart? And how did it smell, and what did you think about that? And so all of these, mile markers that I was writing down for my child started making me think of questions that I wanted to ask, my parents. Like, did I chew on everything in the house and drool and then suddenly one day pop out with teeth, or did I say, Daddy, 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 Daddy? And when Mommy and Daddy said, say Mommy, did I say Daddy, 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 Daddy? Like just things like that. Or when I did start self-feeding, did I eat so much that my belly got really, really, really big, and then I walked around going, oh. Like, these are questions that have, for some reason, come up recently. And, sadly, those are the types of things that I'm not going to get the answers to. But fortunately for me, not all my family members have passed away. So a few months ago, over the summer, my Aunt Jan, who is my godmother, called me up and she said, I want to talk to you. I was hoping you guys could stop by. I really want to talk to you, and I have something to give you. And after she assured me that no, she wasn't going to tell me she was dying of cancer, because that was my first thought, we agreed to go see her, because otherwise I was not gonna. So we went to visit, and we got there, and Jan pulled out this stack of photos, and she handed them over, and she said, I've been holding these for you. I know you don't have a lot of pictures from when you were a kid, partly because we didn't have digital photos back in the 90s, was it? And partly because I was the third child, so they kind of gave up taking pictures by then. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. It's like we're not the important ones by then. So she took out this stack of photos, and she's like, I thought you'd like to have these. And she started going through them and telling me the story of each photo. And in some cases, I'm Italian Catholic, so I have 22 cousins. So, explaining who some of the people were in the photos. And then she got to this one picture, and she was like, this picture, this is the one that makes me think of you. Now, I should step back for a second here and tell you that this whole time that I have been keeping track of my little bear, I call her, my little bear's milestones, I have noticed a trend. She has hit every one of those milestones way ahead of the curve. And I am not bragging. I would love to think it's because she's a genius, but in fact, I think it's her personality. You see, what I've noticed in keeping track of all these milestones is that she is stubborn and willful and determined to be fiercely independent. And she has been that way since she was 8 months old. By that I mean since I was 8 months pregnant with her. And she decided that she no longer wanted to be in prison and that she was going to bust her own self out by kicking her way through mommy's bladder. And she was so determined to make a hole on her own that it never occurred to her to like look for an exit that existed. So she just kept kicking, head up, feet up, and we had to have a C-section. Thank you, little baby bear. And the problem is when you have a C-section, for again, those of you who haven't had the pleasure, they put a blanket over you so you don't actually have to watch the operation, thankfully. So the doctor told me that when they made that incision that freed the little bear, she sprang out feet first like, ha! And unfortunately, I think that this gave her all of the affirmation she needed, because she was like, it worked! I freed myself! And so her personality has just been one of overcoming every obstacle. So it's, you know, she was 1 month old when she started flipping over from back to front and front to back because she's like, I don't want to be a baby anymore. I don't want to be helpless. And then she started crawling soon after that, but she gave up on crawling because that was for suckers. And she started walking. And then a few weeks after she started walking, she's like, don't try to hold my hand. I can do it. And so anytime she comes to an obstacle, she just pushes through it. She knocks that door down, she topples that chair, she pushes people out of her way. And that's why I think she has not so much of a genius as a stubborn little bear. Now, over the summer, as I was sitting there with my Aunt Jan and she's going through all these photos, and she got to her favorite picture of me, she held it up and she said, "This is what you were like." And it was a picture of me at 16 months, because remember, the dates were printed on the back of our photos back then, and 1992. And she's, you know, I'm wearing just a big, attractive diaper, and I have these big fat thighs, which have totally gone away by now. And I'm carrying this box that's like 5 times bigger than me, and I just have this look on my face, like, "Arr!" And my aunt said, "You were the most determined little baby in the world. You were such a bruiser, Jess." And, you know, at another time in my life, being called a bruiser might have offended me, but with everything I've seen with my little bear, it was like this moment of recognition that not only did Jan answer for me what I was like, but she also answered this other question that I didn't even know I was asking, which is my little baby like me? And, you know, one day maybe my little bear will grow up and want to have kids, maybe not. But I suspect at some point she is going to have questions for mommy, and I suspect that she's not really going to care about what color that first poop was. Black, by the way. I think, in fact, what she's going to want to know is what was she like? And now I know I can say, "Sweetie, you were just like mommy."